Okay, so different machines, liners and shaders and coloring machines all have different needle groups and different configurations. But for most intents and purposes, when you're putting together a tattoo machine, these are the three things that you're going to worry about: your machine, your tube, and your needle bar assembly. Basically, these little tiny tips are really fragile, so when you're assembling your machine, you want to make sure that you're not butting the tips of the needles up against the interior of the tube. So basically, you're just going to gently insert the needle bar into the tube. Different needle bars have different tips that go along with them. So some of them are easier to place inside of the tube than others. This one is kind of open-ended, so you don't, it's not that hard to place it in there without damaging the needle. Even a moderately damaged needle, even if you just barely hook one of the tips of them, it can really, really ruin somebody's skin and the tattoo. So basically, holding this firmly in place, once you have this inserted into the needle bar, then basically gently insert the whole thing into the tube vise. So basically, this has a little thumb screw here that loosens and tightens the gate. So holding it in a downward position so that the needle bar stays in a forward position so it doesn't get, again, the needles don't get damaged, and make sure that you're not running the tips of the needles into anything, holding it into your lap and stabbing your leg with it before you use it on somebody. So once you have this into the tube vise here, you still want to leave your thumb screw loose so that you can adjust the position of it. And then this little loop here on the end goes right on this little nipple. At the end of the needle bar here, there's a little loop on the end which goes right on the little end of this nipple on the end of the armature bar. This particular liner has a little bit of material removed from the top of it just so that it moves a little bit faster. So it has a little grommet on there, and I don't want to push it past that grommet. And then I just take a little piece of folded up paper towel here. They do manufacture little rubber grommets that go on the end of the needle bar here, right inside the loop, and you just slide that over the thing. But I think that the little grommet acts as a shock absorber, so it doesn't, your machine isn't working as effectively. Having the loop securely fastened to the armature bar is really important, not only in obtaining a consistent result, but in applying the tattoo efficiently so you're not doing a lot of damage to the skin, and basically you'll end up doing the work a lot faster because your machine's running better and you're applying the abrasion better. So once you have this little part attached to the loop here, basically you want to gently slide this forward. If you see that the needles are down inside of there, then you'll need to adjust it the other way. But basically, you want to barely be able to see the tips of the needles right at the end of the tube. On different needle bars, depending upon what you're doing, whether it's a liner or a shader, or for coloring, sometimes there's different needle configurations, but this is a 5-round shader. It's made for making a moderately thick line, not a fine line, but not a really heavy line. And the coloring needle I have set up here, this is called a 7 mag. And this particular needle configuration has the needles are not going straight across. They're slightly curved to allow for the skin to give a little bit so that the needles on either end aren't digging in as the skin gives a little bit. So you just get a smoother, cleaner range of tone and more consistent coloring, and also it feels a little bit better to get tattooed with a needle that has the round configuration on it. So as you're adjusting your machine, you want to make sure that the needles aren't really hanging out past the end of the tube here, so that the needles can extend and then contract, so that as you're working the skin, when the needles are all the way back, they're not scratching up the surface of the person's skin or getting hung up on the person's skin.